This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Welcome in, everybody, to this week's episode of the DocNJock Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host, Adam the Jock Straczynski. On today's show, big update on Roman Reigns and the direction that they're going to take his championships. Also, we've got a monster update on this future WWE star and what they're doing with him down in developmental, or maybe not so much what he's not doing, as well as some AEW stars possibly going to WWE. We're going to have all of that in the news and notes. Of course, we got to take a look around the wrestling universe, take a look at WWE, take a look at AEW, come up with the biggest topics, trends, and break them all down. And here to do it with me, as always, he's the one, he's the only, he is the Doc, John Macaroon. What's up, cuz?
It's all good, man. Looking forward to this broadcast. So much to get into. I thought it was a real decent week of wrestling, flowed into everything that is going to now start to take place over the next few weeks. Good storylines. I think some of the decisions being made have been really well thought out, and we're now starting to see what is going to take shape this fall. And that's really exciting when I think the competition now is starting to bring out the best in two great wrestling companies.
Yeah, most definitely. The competition has been ratcheted up. If you follow either WWE or you follow AEW or you follow any of the dirt sheet writers online, they're constantly talking about ratings and how good of numbers each are doing. And look, both shows, both companies, I should say, are doing absolutely fantastic right now. Numbers for WWE keep going up. AEW numbers keep going up. And let's just kind of start with WWE.
But real fast, though, I love what you said. I think that's really interesting. And to give people additional insight, I always look to Fightful. I look to Sports Illustrated. I think Justin Barrasso does really among the best reporting of wrestling. I love some of the YouTube channels. There's so many great outlets out there. Now, Dave Meltzer's interesting. I think that he does a lot of things too as well, but I think he's more of the controversial figure because of his grades and his ratings and things like that. But there's so much information, but you got to be careful. Like, you know, there's a couple outlets out there that kind of pinch from others and then have their own spin on it. But I think if you go with Meltzer, you go with SI.com, you go with the Wrestling Observer newsletter, you're getting some real quality insight. And I think that that's just a great thing for wrestlers, is that the dirt sheets have a role, and maybe even sometimes in storylines with how information gets out there. I think it's really great.
No, absolutely. You're spot on. You're 110%. And I wasn't saying that to discredit them, because, you know, I follow all of them. Especially last week? Last week I was on them all, just searching and hunting for stuff that was going on with AEW. So, I mean, Fightful, like you said, is another great one. There's a ton of them out there. And again, you do have to pick and choose who you take stuff from, because some guys out there just throw things at the wall, and if they stick, they stick. So that's why a lot of times when we get to the news and notes in the rumor segment, if it's a rumor, I will usually preface it by, this is a rumor. If it's news or it's notes, I usually have corroborated it with a secondary source before I bring it to you. So pick and choose where you go and who you get stuff from. Just be smart about it, because sometimes there's some crap out there that really mucks it up for everyone. Like I was saying, WWE. I thought Raw was an okay show. I don't feel like this was a great show, but I thought there was some really, really good stuff in this Monday Night Raw that we had this past week. And a lot of it surrounds the Judgment Day. Dominik Mysterio comes out, has a bit of a new look. He's got new gear. His hair's done a little bit different than it was last week. It really feels like he is now a bit of a centerpiece in the Judgment Day. And I think because of that, this storyline that he's got going on with both Edge and he's got going on with Rey Mysterio, I think really breathes new life into the Judgment Day. And it really feels like the Judgment Day now has a bit of a new feel to it. It feels like it's a little bit different than it was when it was just Finn Balor, Damian Priest, and Rhea Ripley. And that feels different than when it was Edge, Damian Priest, and Rhea Ripley. It feels much, much more different now. It feels a little bit more, I don't know, a little bit more as a group, as a faction. Whereas before it felt like it was two wrestlers being led by another wrestler. This feels more like it's an inclusive group, and these guys are going out to cause trouble for whomever. So I thought it was really interesting also that the Judgment Day starts the show and the Judgment Day ends the show. And I think that kind of tells you a little bit about what Triple H and what creative is feeling about this product, about the Judgment Day, and kind of where they are on the card. Do you feel like Dominik Mysterio's insertion into the Judgment Day breathes a little bit of new life to it and it has a little bit of a different feel?
See, here's the problem. It kind of feels like, to me, my note on it, it just feels like it's too far of a swing. You know what I mean? It kind of was like, this is a young man that's working up to be next to his father, and now he's a badass. I'm not believing it just yet. I would play more into the impact that Rhea's having on him. Now, obviously, she's in all the shots, but I'm having a hard time believing that Dominik is a badass because it kind of just looks like a young punk, and that's probably how it's going to play out when he gets his ass beat in this feud. But I get it. It's, the announcers are doing the best that they can to emphasize that this is a change. And he said, I'm not a kid anymore. I'm a man. But it's hard because literally 2 weeks ago, you're donning all these colors. You got that mullet. It's just right now really tough to sell that Dominik Mysterio is a badass. And maybe over the next couple of weeks, they can do a better job of it. But right now, I'm not buying it.
And look, I totally get what you're saying. Like the intriguing storyline within the storyline is Rhea Ripley and Dominik Mysterio. It really feels as though she has captured him. Like she has, like he is like her attention. Like he needs basically her approval for everything, or she has to tell him what to do. I think that is the story within the story, and I think you're right. That is probably the one that's a little bit more juicy. That's the one that's kind of get everybody hooked. But I think for right now, with what I'm seeing and kind of the way I'm feeling, I think you have a ton of valid points here where he does feel like he's a little bit of a young punk. Doesn't really feel like he's a man yet. But I think what you're getting with Rhea Ripley is she's taking him on that journey to turn him into a man. And I think with this group, he's helping to help elevate this group just because of the eyes that he's helping to put on it. The fact that he was able to turn on his father, who's one of the greatest luchadors of all time. The fact that he turned on Edge, who's one of the greatest wrestling superstars of all time. I think it helps add a different flavor, a little bit of a different segment to that group that, let's be honest, I think the Judgment Day was getting a little bit stale. It was like, okay, what are we doing? You guys don't really win a whole lot. You go out and you look for other losers, and what are we doing here? I think with Dominik Mysterio now involved in it, I think what you have is a renewed life for this group. And look, this will get stale at some point too. So I think it helped to kind of reshape it so they can then evolve it a little bit more and kind of find what works. Because I really do feel like the Judgment Day was a group that was kind of put together. Edge had an idea, and they're like, all right, yeah, let's go with it. Cody Rhodes gets hurt. Vince panics. They're like, we got to pull you out of the group. And they're like, well, what do we do? Finn Balor's not doing nothing. We'll throw Finn Balor in there. And then it's kind of like, okay, we're just sloshing around here trying to figure out what the hell we're going to do. Because this was something that Finn didn't really want to do, but he wanted to do something. And it was originally Edge's idea, but they wanted to take it in a bit of a different direction. He didn't like that. So I think this is allowing them a little bit of time to kind of reshape and remold this and get this to be a much better product. Because you go back a couple weeks ago, you and I were kind of like, what the fuck are they doing with Judgment Day? What is this? What are they doing? And I think now we're kind of seeing a little bit. We're getting a little bit more of a clear direction. I think bringing in guys like Edge and Rey Mysterio to help boost them up, I think is probably a really good thing. Look, we had a title change. And I don't know if there was any point for this title change on Monday Night Raw. I don't know if there was a point of even putting the belts on these wrestlers. I do want to get your take on it because I was a little bit confused by it. Was there any point in making Raquel and Aliyah tag team champs to just get the belts off of them and give them to Io Sky and Dakota Kai 2 weeks later? Like, they just wrestled, and Raquel and Aliyah just beat them. Now, I think you and I both were surprised when Raquel and Aliyah were made champions, and we thought it was a really cool story. And I think we both believe Raquel is in line for a monster push because Triple H really believes in her. She's very tall. She's a pretty strong girl. She's got a good look. She does a decent enough job on the microphone. I really wish she would quit jumping back and forth between English and Spanish, but that's just a personal thing on my point. I just don't know why you would put belts on somebody and then 2 weeks later take them off and put them on the people who they beat to get the belts. It just doesn't make sense to me. Was there any point in doing that? Like, did it help Raquel and Aliyah at all?
See, it's kind of twofold in your part in that it's a great question you ask, but at the same time, what you and I don't like is the devaluing of belts. Yep. So it's kind of like one of those things where you see, okay, you could answer the question, why did they put it on? Well, he's like, oh, this is serious. These guys are a serious tag team because they've been fledgling and not getting a lot of buzz. You give them a title, and then people say, oh, maybe this is a serious tag team. Maybe this is something that is a little nugget, a little taste. But you and I are like, look, titles should never really go and change hands within 30 days. Like, if you get a title, you should at least have it a month or two to kind of travel around with it, get some matches in, have a feud that is meaningful to kind of continue to elevate the belt. You cheapen the belt when it's like, oh, well, anybody can win it. But in regards to the storyline, it makes perfect sense. I think that Bayley's group has to be dominant. They have to be something of a group that has to have some influence and some power. So I loved it all the way around, but at the same time, not at the expense of the titles. But I think it gives Rodriguez and her partner a little bit more attention. We're talking about them. Maybe now they can get involved in some more higher profile type stuff and just say, hey, kind of like a little boost, a little bit of a cheat code to try to get them over with a title. You and I don't agree with that and doing it that way, because in the end you cheapen the title, because really if the title can be held by this team, Bayley's group didn't beat anybody of significance to get the title. Now, when Roman and the Usos lose, it's going to shatter news. It's going to shatter records because of just how long and how serious they've made that belt. So I just think that it's cheap. It doesn't validate significantly what Bayley's team did in order to get the W. But in the end, the rightful team now has the belts.
Yeah, and look, I think that was the direction that you should have went all along, was just put it on them. Neither you nor I really understood why Raquel and Aliyah got it. What I will say is I think it did help shine a little bit of a light on Aliyah, but I don't necessarily think it did anything great for Raquel. Now she's like a one-time WWE Tag Team Champ. Okay, if we're talking about just adding records to add records. Okay, cool. But like, you didn't do anything to help evolve or build or help establish her character anymore. Yeah, she got on TV a couple more times, but you could have did that with her having other wrestling matches. You could have did that with her wrestling other people. To me, it just didn't make sense. And you're right. This is who the belts should have been on the first time. I think we've all been looking forward to watching Io Sky and Dakota Kai take on Sasha Banks and Naomi whenever they come back. I think you and I both feel like that's going to be a hell of a wrestling match. It's going to be a great match, and we both want to see it. You've got the old versus the new, and I think it'll be incredibly interesting. And they both teams can do great things. You've got some high flyers, you got some ring generals there who can do some great things. But I don't know why you would put it on Raquel and Aliyah just to take it off. Now we've got Aliyah in this storyline where she's hurt and she's injured and Raquel's out for revenge, and you've seen Raquel take on Bayley on SmackDown, and it was a good enough match, but it was just I don't know why we're going in this direction. I do want to let it play out. I do want to see what's going to happen when we let it play out, but I just didn't understand why you put it on there just to take them off 2 weeks later. And speaking of SmackDown on Friday, I think it was Friday afternoon, news started to break that there's going to be a major press conference with WWE. That's coming out on Saturday. Saturday, they're having a monster press conference. All regards Logan Paul. All regards Roman Reigns. Logan Paul calls out Roman Reigns, wants to challenge him for the WWE Universal Championship. What do you think about this? And how could this impact Logan Paul's development and kind of his trajectory of his growth? Because I seen that news break, and then I watched SmackDown, and I was like, okay, so Logan Paul is going to call out Roman Reigns. And my initial thought is this is just another guy to feed Roman Reigns until we get to what I'm going to tell you about in the news and notes segment. So you're going to want to stick around for that. But for me, it was just another guy to feed the Roman Reigns. And I'm like, why would you feed a guy who has looked incredible? He's looked absolutely incredible. Shocked both you and I. Every time he has taken the ring, he has looked awesome. Why would you feed a guy like this to Roman Reigns? Like, he obviously not on this level. Definitely not on this level. Like, right now he is a mid-card wrestler. but he's going to challenge Pro Wrestling Illustrated's #1 wrestler of the year, the guy in all of wrestling, Roman Reigns. It just doesn't make any sense to me, and I don't know how you give him this match, because I don't feel like he's earned it. This is the one thing that you and I often talk about with wrestling. It always felt like you kind of had to earn it, but like you kind of worked your way up to being the #1 contender. I don't think Logan Paul has done anything to be the #1 contender. He's had 2 matches in his WWE career. They both have been pretty good. We both have enjoyed them a lot, but I don't think he's earned the match with Roman Reigns. On top of that, you are young in your career. Unless Roman Reigns goes out there and sells crazy. Now, you don't have to win to get over, but Logan Paul's already fighting an uphill battle. If you watched Friday Night SmackDown, he was getting booed heavily by everybody. I just don't know what sense this makes to put him in a ring with Roman Reigns right now. Can you help me out?
No, it's like one of those things where you can draw attention. Obviously the interview that Roman had on the podcast with Logan's interesting. I love that, he has this influence now. He's got a big audience. He's going to bring a new audience to WWE, but I don't see any value in this other than the fact it's going to be entertaining. And again, I can understand potentially getting the rub off of Roman to help elevate Logan Paul. It could also just be, hey, we're looking to sell a pay-per-view. An overseas crowd wants to see something. Let's do this. Everybody knows. I mean, look, there is a 0.000% chance that Logan Paul is going to walk away the champion. But bottom line, what you can do is, and I think that we're understating the potential of, despite whether somebody earns the match or not, which he clearly hasn't. It would piss me off if I'm Seth Rollins and I'm like, damn, I'm busting my ass, rolling my ankle, hurting my
Kevin
ass.
Owens, too.
Kevin Owens. And I got to get in line behind Logan Paul just because he's an influencer. That is just tough. But best for business. And now you say, okay, we're in the business of trying to elevate Logan Paul. It's like this. Whether or not you and I or anybody else believes he earned the opportunity, for whatever reason, he's got it. So now for Logan Paul, you have to take this as a challenge of like, okay, I'm now stepping into the main event of a potentially largely viewed show. Now it's my time to kind of surprise Roman Reigns. You got to take it as I'm going to be training. I'm going to do everything possible. And this will be an opportunity for Logan Paul to elevate himself, to have a quality performance against Roman Reigns. Now, you have a quality performance against Roman Reigns after coming off of the craziness that he did at SummerSlam. Now you start to say, okay, you know what? This dude's one of the boys. This dude can wrestle. And if you can do that, now you've established somebody that, hey, maybe he can be somebody that we can throw in a house show every now and then, throw in a pay-per-view against, the likes of Pat McAfee or somebody else. So we can throw him in a feud periodically. Or he turns around and he says, okay, I'm in there with the best. It's not good enough for me. Let me stick to promoting and things like that. It's an opportunity. So I want to see what he does with it. Of course, he did not earn it, but I actually will want to see it, because when you have the likes of Paul Heyman having to address Logan Paul on SmackDown, I thought, well, okay, it's not in the realm of how I would have done it, but now that it's being presented to us, I will watch it and I will be intrigued to see what he does with the opportunity. And that's what wrestling is. There have been people that show up sometimes and we're like, God, this guy looks like the worst thing ever. And then all of a sudden, like, just throw back the film of Daniel Bryan when he was with WWE early on. He was a skinny twig that looked like nothing. But with some opportunities, with some growth, with some personality development, with some WWE flair and spin, he made himself into one of the best performers in the world. So Logan Paul,
I would argue Daniel Bryan is probably not your best comparison, because he was ripping it up on the indies.
Yes.
Logan Paul has looked great in the 2 matches that he has had.
But would you?
I get what you're saying, though. I get what you're saying. Back
then, when he debuted in the early segments, did you think he was a star? No. You thought, okay, this is a mid card. Now, of course, he had a track record, and you thought maybe he had a certain ceiling. He broke through that. So yeah, of course, it's not a perfect comparison. But what I'm saying is, Logan Paul now, he built his audience. Now he has an opportunity. Now, go out there in the match and show me something. Prove me wrong. Prove that, well, maybe I was wrong to question your worthiness of being in the ring.
What did you make of Paul Heyman? This is the first time we've seen Paul Heyman on WWE television since SummerSlam when he got F5'd through the announcer table. It's the first time Paul Heyman has had to come out to address something regarding Roman Reigns. On top of that, he comes out with the full bloodline. Solo Sikoa, Sami Zayn, both of the Usos. What did you make of all of that? Because I liked that presentation. I really did feel like it was missing Roman Reigns. I felt like they look so massive. I mean, it's only 5 guys, but they look like they are just a squad to be messed with. Like, you do not want to F with them at all. I loved the presentation. I thought it was absolutely great. I thought in the back later on, before Solo Sikoa's match, the internal story they've got going on with Sami Zayn, I think, is a brand new onion layer to it. It adds more depth. It adds more flavor to what is going on. What took place on the outside before they got to that backstage part where you've got Jey Uso and Sami Zayn butting heads and it cost Sami Zayn a match. I thought that was great. Solo Sikoa siding with Sami Zayn. I thought that was great. There's just so much. Paul Heyman not even wanting to acknowledge Sami Zayn. I think it's so great. I think what you have here is really, really good, interesting storytelling within a story arc. What did you make of Paul Heyman making, like, basically re-debuting? He's been off TV for what feels like 3 months. It's only been like 6 weeks, but it feels like 3 months.
It was great. Yeah, it makes it feel more important. It's amazing. Because like you're like, wow, all this for Logan Paul. But I think, man.
Logan Paul did a really good job holding wits with Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman will destroy you on a microphone. And
I love the line where he says, "Now I have to address you." And Solo comes out and he's just a monstrous, man. It's just great. I think that's one way to make it feel important. Like, okay, we're going to treat you like everybody else. You're in our way, so now you're somebody that is going to have to deal with the likes of the bloodline. But yeah, of course it needs Roman Reigns, but it's absolutely amazing that without Roman Reigns, you definitely realize, okay, these are the bullies on the block. They're not going to be happy with anybody in the way. I think you and I are kind of in the same boat where we're like, okay, can you just kind of tell a different kind of story that potentially could elevate this other than you're in our way, we're going to destroy you kind of thing? I'm curious to see how creative Logan now gets in regards to his efforts to maybe embarrass Roman Reigns, or maybe even to like call out his reign and just talk about maybe some things that you're not supposed to in regards to, some inside stuff, or in regards to, Roman as a performer or anything like that. So whatever it may be to build up the feud, it definitely made it feel more important.
Yeah, it definitely did make it feel more important. When we were talking about the Logan Paul, Roman Reigns, Paul Heyman stuff, I mentioned Kevin Owens, and he didn't make the news and notes, or he didn't make the rundown at all, but I did want to take a brief moment to kind of talk about his resurgence and kind of what you've thought about it, because I think Kevin Owens is doing some of his best work since we've seen him come up from NXT and basically challenge John Cena. I think Kevin Owens, some of his mic work that he's been doing with Austin Theory, and some of his mic work and some of the things that he's been alluding to with the Usos has been awesome. I think this reinvigoration of Kevin Owens, and here's the thing, I'm not sure if he's a face or if he's a heel. He's kind of this weird tweener. He kind of is this generation's version of Stone Cold Steve Austin right now. Stone Cold Steve Austin always walked the line. He was always anti-establishment, but he would do bad guy things even though he was a good guy. He was like that weird tweener. What do you make of this resurgence that Kevin Owens is having? He's out of this comedy bit with Ezekiel / Elias and is now destroying people, whether it be on the microphone or whether it be physically.
Yeah, wow. It's very impressive. I think one of the things that you look at with the character is he believable to be world champion? And absolutely. So remember that WWE is aware that the best version of a character is just an amped up version of themselves. And this is the best version of Kevin Owens. Aggressive, really physical, somebody that can challenge anybody and can have a match with anybody. So he's coming into his own, and it'll be a great opportunity. You know it's coming. You know in the next 2 years, Triple H tabbed him as a guy that we can put titles on, that we can put in main event feuds, that we can give mic time to. The guy gets a lot of mic time, and he's been involved in a lot of creative stuff. Whether we like it or we don't, he's involved. He's in the mix. And I think it's time to potentially even spotlight Kevin Owens in regards to the fact that this is somebody that's taken everything that he's been given, good storylines, bad storylines. You got to remember, he was in one of the biggest storylines heading into a WrestleMania with Chris Jericho. The best friends shit was really classic and really good, and will live forever in terms of television quality and entertainment. Now, did they get the respect that they deserved on the WrestleMania card? No. But Chris Jericho did the guy a solid and put him in a spot where, okay, here's a step, now keep moving up. And every single week, it seems like Kevin Owens is inching his way up in regards to the conversation of being a main eventer. And that's all you can ask for.
All right, I do want to transition over to AEW. Was there anything that caught your eye or that you wanted to talk about WWE before we transition and switch gears?
The women's stuff is kind of moving a little bit forward. I'm liking to see what's been going on SmackDown with Ronda and things like that. The women, I think, need something, kind of like to describe it as a shot in the arm. They need more moments. Like they're hitting singles and doubles, and every single week the performances are good. But I think at this point they need like a grand slam. Like, when Stephanie came out and got involved in an angle, or they need something that is just a little bit more. Like the Liv stuff is okay, the Bianca is okay, but it's kind of getting like where Bianca's kind of feuds are all the same.
I wanted to ask you, do you feel like because you mentioned her just now, and in my head I'm like, man, she feels flat. Do you feel like her character has kind of plateaued? Yeah,
it needs something because it's the same thing over and over. You diss me, well, I'm good. Okay. We need a little bit more, okay, yeah, someone's going to trash talk you, and then you're like, well, you defeated me, but I'm still good. I got the belt. Okay. Well, you trash talk me, but I'm still good. It's like, okay, we need a little bit more. It's got to evolve. So it's not flat because it's really interesting. She's a great performer. It has to evolve now into something else. So, and that maybe involve the elevation of some other characters or whatever it is. The women to me are in my radar in regards to, with Triple H in charge, I see good things. But like I said, a lot of singles and doubles. But my notes are, we need some home runs. And maybe that's going to be the return of some characters that we want to see, or some more feuds that are a little bit more interesting. But at this point in time, maybe a little bit more of an infusion of some younger talent in WWE on the women's side as well. I think it's an untapped resource is the best way to put it. And it's good, but it can be great. And you just have to find it. And I hope they do.
Yeah, I hope they kind of get it figured out, because it does feel like the women's division is just kind of slugging along. It's not elevated. It's not where it really kind of needs to be. All right, transitioning into AEW. Last week, you and I predicted the finals for the AEW Championship, and we got half right, which sounds about right for us. Whenever we do calling the card, we're usually about half right. What do you think about the finals being basically everybody from the Blackpool Combat Club? It is Moxley versus Danielson. You and I last week had this pegged as Danielson and Sammy Guevara. Instead, we're getting Jon Moxley going back at it. If he wins, he will have held the championship for now his third time in basically 4 weeks. And then you've got Bryan Danielson, who will be making his first stab at winning the AEW championship, which I think is one of the best belts, and I think they've done a really good job building the history of this belt and not devaluing the history of this belt in a very, very short time. I do hold this belt up there with some of the all-time classic wrestling belts. Well, what do you think about this being exclusively a Blackpool Combat Club final?
It should be. They're amongst the best in the world. I have to presume it looks like the time. I mean, it's so tough because my head says that, Danielson is the guy. But what you have to always have in the back of your mind is you can't have performers that you have that doubt. Like, he gets the belt and then he takes one wrong move and he's out for a year.
Does he get hurt? Right?
Does he get hurt? Right. It's hard because you can see a year reign with Danielson. You can see the American Dragon doing some great things. But at the same time, it would feel like normally that Jon Moxley is the guy. Like, he can hold it. He's healthy. He's pretty much the top guy in regards to who's the best. But, man, it's going to make it tough because sitting here, I don't know who's going to win. But if it were me putting my pencil to the paper, I'm writing Bryan Danielson as the champion because it's unique, it's fresh. You open up some more storylines and to revisit some storylines. And you got to look at, okay, am I invested as much in MJF versus Jon Moxley? I'd be interested. Am I more intrigued by what the hell could come out of MJF's mouth in regards to what he could say about Danielson? That might be interesting too. But it just kind of feels like with the degree of evaluation has to be looked at in the lens of who is going to take on MJF. And it's probably going to be Moxley.
But I almost feel like AEW alluded to something on Dynamite. I felt like on Dynamite, when MJF came out to cut his promo, it was heavily focused on Jon Moxley. Now, whether that was because Jon Moxley was out the week before and they had a little bit of a butting of heads when they cut promos on each other, or they're trying to set something up very, very shortly for MJF to take that belt off of Jon Moxley, I'm not 100% sure. And this goes back to creative decisions, like you were talking about. MJF comes out, cuts this really, really intense promo, and mentioned Jon Moxley, I would say probably 85% of the time. If Jon Moxley wins this belt, he now has held this belt 4 times in the last 3 weeks. That means he has lost that belt at least that many times. What are we doing? I almost don't want you to have a transitional champion here because that belt has bounced around so much, you know, whether it's been CM Punk getting hurt after he initially wins it, to then Jon Moxley winning a tournament to become the interim champion, to then having a unification and beating CM Punk, to then losing it to CM Punk 10 days later. To me, at some point, somebody's got to hold on to this belt for what feels like more than 2 weeks. And if Jon Moxley's going to win this, to just then turn around and lose to MJF, I don't necessarily know if that's what's best for business. I'm looking for a longer run with somebody to hold it. And look, I will tell you this. This is some insider stuff. Jon Moxley dropped the belt to CM Punk at All Out. Jon Moxley had a 1.5 feet out the door. He was on his way for a small vacation. He was on his way to take a couple of days off. And by a couple of days, I mean a few weeks. He was going away. He was going to take Renee, and they were going to load up the baby, and they were going on a vacation. And then CM Punk had to go and basically nuke a whole bunch of stuff. And Tony was like, I need you back. You've got to come back. And being the good little soldier that he is, Jon Moxley came back, and now he's here a couple weeks later. I don't know if you put the belt on Moxley just to see him lose it again. I don't know if that's the right decision. And I don't know if you put the belt on Danielson just to have this ongoing elongated feud with MJF. Now, that could be great, and that could be really, really good because MJF is a wizard on the microphone, and I don't care what Kenny says. I do enjoy his work in the ring. I think he's very good in the ring. Also, Danielson, one of the greatest in the ring. So, could they pull stuff out of each other and really help elevate each other? I think so. I'm not sure. Like you said, if you have the pencil, do you put it on Danielson knowing that at any moment in time he can bump his head, or he could just kind of turn too hard to the right or too hard to the left, and he might be dealing with a concussion or concussion-like symptoms, and he'll be on the shelf? That was the thing with Jon Moxley you didn't necessarily have to worry about. The only thing you had to worry about with Jon Moxley was keeping the booze away from him. And he's done a really good job of getting himself right. So I think AEW is in a little bit of a situation here. If you don't worry about injuries and you don't worry about the other stuff outside, I think you put the belt on Danielson, and I think we build a long feud between MJF and Danielson, with MJF constantly needling Danielson, saying, I'm right behind. I can take it at any time I want.
Absolutely.
And Danielson basically saying, come get it.
Yeah.
I think that'd probably be best for business.
I can't wait to see the match. I think it's going to be very intriguing as to what's happening. But now you got, as you were discussing that, my creative juices got flowing. You have Moxley win. Now he goes on vacation. He's like, great, I earned this. Takes 2-3 weeks off. You just film one day, and MJF shows up wherever he is on vacation. You know.
That would be great. That would be great.
And Moxley's on the beach. And he's got his legs up, and all of a sudden MJF is swimming in the pool. Like, you don't even have to allude to it. He's just there. Like, you don't even have to have any words said. No, you just keep panning the camera to MJF looking at the bar. Moxley's hanging with, maybe the first couple of scenes, Moxley and Renee are hanging out, and then you pan and there's MJF in the background having a sip. Then the next time,
I like that. I think that is good.
Moxley's playing volleyball, and there's MJF signing an autograph on the side. Like, you don't allude to it like he's there, and it would be good. But we'll see how creative they get with it. I can't wait to see the match. AEW has been intriguing so much so of late, and to be honest, you have to give credit to Chris Jericho. Dude is flying around that ring, and he's so natural. They're telling stories like the dude looks good. You're like, okay, this guy
looks great.
He looks great. He's doing his thing. The introduction of Daniel Garcia obviously is kind of continuing to plant the seeds of probably where Chris Jericho is going to go next. I thought some of the signs in the crowd were very funny. I thought that Dynamite was really entertaining, top to bottom. I thought there was a lot of good angles that you could take away. And like I said, I've been very impressed. And the thing that I'll say is, the one area that was flat, though, was I thought that the promo with the Firm just kind of fell a little bit flat. Like, it was weird because, the big man looked at the manager and was like, "What are you doing? Don't touch me." And it didn't feel like he was all down to get hugged by anybody. And it just looked like, okay, we got a collection of guys, but they didn't feel like they were all together. It was kind of like, we're all here together. And the promo kind of dragged on a little bit. I thought that it's good. I like the phrase, an entourage by committee or an entourage on call. It's
on
great.
retainer.
On retainer. I think that's fine. But at the same time, I think everybody in that group, the Firm, has the potential to be a star. And I like that is laid out as to which belt each one was going to go for. And it was good, but I just thought this could be done a lot better in a certain way. Did you get that sense, or was it just me?
No, I totally agreed with you. Look, I think you are right in your assessment. The one thing I will say that I think it did a really good job of is I think it helped to give you and flesh out a little bit of a backstory as to why all of these guys are there. And I think it kind of told you what their motivation was. And it also, by Stokely Hathaway going through and telling what everybody wanted, I think it helped elevate those individual championships. That ROH Pure Championship got elevated. The Tag Team Championships got elevated. The All Atlantic Championship got elevated. W. Morrissey was the one thing that was really weird in that. And there have been memes that have been made from it instantly. It was the one thing that was different. What is W. Morrissey? What does he want to do? Right now, he's just a big guy who looks irritated. What I would love to see, and we've already seen it, and I think they screwed it up when they did it. I would love to see Wardlow versus W. Morrissey. I would love to see these two guys in a slugfest. But at the time, W. Morrissey was working for Impact. And if you work for another company, you come to WWE, you're laying down. It doesn't matter. And that match never really felt like it got going at all. It was like W. Morrissey got a couple moves in, and then Wardlow hit him with a couple power bombs, and we were done. And it was like, okay, all right, well, let's move on. That to me would be a fantastic match to watch if you didn't already screw it up, and that wasn't sitting in my mind.
Yeah, absolutely. So AEW had a lot of good things going on. And I think moving forward, Grand Slam has been a success. And like we said, the competition level has been great. Anything else stick out to you or caught your attention as a performer, or anything that stuck out for you this week with AEW?
The one negative, and this goes back to what took place with the finals for the AEW Championship. I do kind of feel like they missed a spot for Sammy Guevara.
Yes.
I do feel like they could have elevated him a little bit more. And I like the way he came out. I like how he came out serious, Sammy Guevara. He came out as, I'm winning this championship. And he was like, I'm doing it my way, and I'm not doing it with any crookedness. I'm just gonna come out here, I'm gonna fight, and I'm gonna win. And for a part of it, he had Jon Moxley on the ropes, and then he went to some underhanded tactics and still couldn't get the W. I mean, when you've got underhanded tactics and you're still losing to a guy, I don't necessarily think it devalues you, but I really felt like they could have really helped elevate him. If he could have won clean against Jon Moxley, and he's going to go into this matchup with Bryan Danielson, I think you're looking at him totally different. You know what I'm saying? I really feel like they missed the spot here. Like, it'll be interesting to see, because if Moxley wins, okay, cool, it makes sense for Sammy to have not won. But if Danielson's going to win, why didn't you just put Sammy Guevara there? Have him beat Moxley clean. Have him go on to face Danielson. Have them have a great match, because those two guys would have a great match. And Danielson wins. Like, again, you don't have to win to get over. You can get over and still lose. That was the one thing that kind of had me scratching my head. And look, it's all going to have to play out. It's all going to play out next week. But that was the one thing where I was kind of like, I think you might have missed a step here. And we'll just kind of have to wait and see. What did you think about that? Did you think that they should have maybe have had Sammy Guevara win that match against Jon Moxley?
No, because too soon. It's not believable yet. Sammy Guevara is there, but mid-card, like TV champion, North American champion, stuff like that. World title picture, still seems like it's not just there yet. I'm curious to see where he goes now, what he's starting to get into in regards to everything that he's got going on. But no, the right two are there. The two big stars. Remember, this is Grand Slam, and I think that they wanted to put as many people in those seats as possible, and I think that Moxley and Danielson are those two guys. It's the right call. I think that maybe Guevara gets involved in it, maybe one way or another, to sway the result of the outcome, but we'll see what happens. But I don't agree. I think that they didn't drop the ball, but I think what you're saying is it's time to elevate him into something a little bit more relevant.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it just kind of, again, we're talking about how Bianca Belair's character feels like it's kind of plateaued.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like Sammy Guevara's character is plateaued. It just, I felt like you could have put him in a bigger spot and kind of seen what he had done. So that was kind of it for me. What was your show of the week?
For me, it was SmackDown. I thought that the infusion of Paul Heyman coming back and to see the continued work with the Bloodline and Sami Zayn, I thought that was a great line where Solo goes, "Hey, Jay, you've been slipping. Stay here." And then he's like, "Sammy, come hit me up." And the look that Sammy gave was great. It was a little
Dude,
nugget
he's been fantastic.
A little nugget of acknowledgement. And some people have frozen the reaction that Sammy had when the Usos are looking at him and he's get that surprised look. It's been amazing. So for me, I thought the best show of the week was SmackDown.
Yeah, SmackDown for me as well. I thought SmackDown was absolutely incredible this week. Comparing it to, look, you had two title matches or two, I guess, tournament matches on Dynamite, and Dynamite was really, really good. But I still think SmackDown and everything with Logan Paul, everything with Paul Heyman, everything with the Bloodline, I thought was absolutely fantastic. On top of that, we didn't even talk about it. You got a new number one contenders match for the SmackDown championships, and the Brawling Brutes end up winning that. I thought that was a pretty decent match as well. So I'm going SmackDown. SmackDown gets my nod as well.
All right, cuz, it's the time, the best time of the podcast. Hit me with this week's professional wrestling news and notes. What made your list?
So we've talked about a lot about Roman Reigns to start this show. And now we've got a big update on the plans for Roman Reigns. Per WrestlingNews.co, a source familiar with the creative process told them that there are still no plans for Reigns to lose his titles this year. The report noted that when Reigns won the Universal Championship in August of 2020, the plan was for him to be the champion for the match against The Rock that is scheduled for WrestleMania 39. Triple H is reportedly moving forward with the original plans for Reigns' title reign, with the idea for Reigns to walk into WrestleMania 39 as champion. The report also noted that Vince McMahon's original plan called for Reigns to retain against The Rock at WrestleMania before becoming the company's top babyface, which I find to be incredibly interesting. As previously reported, Reigns vs. The Rock is currently planned for WrestleMania 39 in April of 2023, but only if The Rock's schedule allows for a wrestling return. Now, WrestleVotes has added to this report stating that while WWE wants to have two champions headed into WrestleMania, they don't want Roman Reigns losing a match between now and April, and Triple H is open to creative measures to help complete this. So at some point they want to split the belts apart, and they only want Roman having one, and they want to have a different champion. I don't know how the hell they're going to do that. I don't know why we just don't have one belt and we call it a day. I get it, Roman's on a short schedule, but let's figure this out. Now, an update on a major future WWE star. Details have emerged on the original plan for Olympic gold medalist Gabe Stevenson in WWE. Stevenson signed an exclusive agreement with WWE in September of 2021 with the expectation that he'd join the company full-time after finishing college. The Olympic wrestling star has yet to make his pro wrestling debut, despite officially being chosen for the Raw roster in 2021's draft. He hasn't done much in the ring for WWE besides suplexing Chad Gable at WrestleMania 38. During the Saturday night's main event TSN radio show, Dave Meltzer stated that WWE wanted Stevenson to make his in-ring debut in April, noting he hasn't debuted and they wanted him to debut at WrestleMania, and it didn't happen. He was supposed to be fast-tracked to the main event by now, like come right out of college and win the NCAAs, which he did, and then go right to WWE's top level, and it didn't happen. They're waiting for him to be ready, I guess. There's been some talk of him going back to college next year, too. I don't know what's going to happen, but he's training with Ken Anderson, so we'll see what happens. This is what I was told originally when they first announced the deal, is that he was going to be the new Brock Lesnar, and they were going to send coaches to Minnesota and get a place in Minnesota during the wrestling season. They were going to have him also train as a pro wrestler, which probably wasn't a good idea to do both at the same time, but that was what their idea was. And that he would do scattered Raws all over the course of the year. WWE wanted to build to a Triple H versus Stevenson at WrestleMania 38, but obviously Hunter's health would not allow it, so what we ended up getting was we got Triple H leaving his boots in the ring instead. Now, AEW stars to WWE. Now, this isn't MJF. These guys have a little bit more swing than a guy like MJF. A new report has indicated that AEW EVPs Matt and Nick Jackson of the Young Bucks have sent out feelers to gauge a potential WWE interest. Now, this report has gone back and forth both ways, and I'm going to cover both ends of it here. This comes off the heels of the CM Punk tirade and the dust-up. The Young Bucks' contract expires at the end of 2023, as their one-year option was picked up by AEW earlier this year. For a twist to this story, the Bucks are denying that they ever sent feelers to WWE. However, they're not saying that it didn't happen. This might be like in pro sports where you have an agent who gets involved and the athlete is like, hey, I didn't talk to the Yankees. Like, they specifically didn't talk to anybody in management, but there might have been a conduit, somebody else. Now, Dave Meltzer has come on and added the person who they talked to, and they did talk to somebody, and they probably have talked to this person many, many times before, but the person in question has also said that there was no mention of them asking to talk to management or anything of that sort. This was not even in the discussion. So it's kind of a weird back and forth here. It does sound like the Young Bucks talked to somebody. It sounds like they have a friend in WWE, talked to them about possibly coming over to WWE, but not necessarily anybody in management. So we'll have to kind of wait and see kind of what happens. The Young Bucks are still suspended along with Kenny Omega as well as CM Punk and Ace Steel. Is the black and gold back? I'm not sure if you watched NXT 2.0 this week, but a lot of stuff changing. It appears as though the 2.0 era of NXT is officially over, and the black and gold brand is coming back, at least aesthetically. On the 1-year anniversary of the 2.0 show, it closed with the last shot of the night featuring a video narrated by Shawn Michaels where he claims that NXT was constantly evolving before ending with a video with a shot of the new NXT logo. The logo featured the same NXT font from the 2.0 logo, but in silver writing with a gold outline and no longer the 2.0 branding. It looks as though Triple H is coming in, wrecking shop, and rebuilding it the way he wants to rebuild it. NXT was his baby. Vince came in and shit all over it, and Triple H is saying, nah, bro, it's going back to black and gold. We might be watching more wrestling, John. We might be watching more wrestling. NXT, baby.
NXT's back. Hey, that might be the best news you delivered all week. That's pretty good. I think it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, me too. Now, one final thing before we get out of here. Suspended stars are back with AEW. I had just mentioned the guys who are still suspended, and that's because, according to Dave Meltzer on Wrestling Observer Radio, Pat Buck, Christopher Daniels, Brandon Cutler, and Michael Nzawa are all off suspension, with the status of Punk, Steele, and the Elite still up in the air. Meltzer said Christopher Daniels, Pat Buck, Brandon Cutler, and Michael Nzawa are off suspension because I guess the investigation showed that they were trying to break up the Kenny Omega, the Young Bucks, CM Punk, Ace Steel status is still up in the air as there's a third-party investigation ongoing. I think the only person who was actually back at TV, however, was Pat Buck, and that's because Michael Nizawa is in Japan for the video game, and Christopher Daniels is also in Japan for the video game and wrestling a few matches. So we'll have to wait and see what's going on with everybody else, but there are guys who are coming back off of suspension this week. That's going to do it for this week's wrestling news and notes.
Make sure you follow Adam on Twitter at AdamRSTROZ. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. If you've agreed or disagreed with anything that you've heard, hit us up. And we love the engagement. We love the opportunity that we can have to debate professional wrestling. And you guys, it's just so great because the world of wrestling has infused so many different avenues. It's great to be part of the wrestling community. Anywhere that you listen and find your favorite podcast, just type in Detroit Sports Podcast and our content will find you. I can't wait to break down another week of professional wrestling on the Doc and Jock Wrestling Podcast.